Mark had always loved the quiet retreat his land provided, nestled just beyond the busy streets and tidy homes of the neighborhood. His property was a slice of calm surrounded by towering pines and the gentle rustle of the wind. For years, this cabin had been his sanctuary, a place where he could escape the noise of everyday life and enjoy peaceful mornings by the lake. But one crisp autumn morning, as Mark drove up the familiar gravel road toward his property, he came to an unexpected halt. A locked gate now blocked the path, a heavy metal barrier with a sturdy padlock hanging from it. The once open and welcoming road was now sealed off, cutting him entirely off from his own land. Mark blinked in disbelief and stepped out of his truck. The crisp air carried a strange silence. He looked around for any signs or notices explaining the sudden closure, but found none. Just the cold, impassive gate standing between him and the land he had owned for years. What on earth? Mark muttered, running his hand along the cold metal. The road was the only way to reach his cabin. There was no alternative route. His mind raced. Had there been an emergency? Was the road unsafe? Or had something changed in the neighborhood? He pulled out his phone and called the local neighborhood office. It's a place where the Homeowners Association managed the nearby properties. The receptionist listened politely but seemed unsure. The road. "I'm not certain about that," she said carefully. "I believe there have been some maintenance concerns raised, but you'll need to speak with the board directly. Their meetings are on Thursdays." Mark's frustration grew. He needed answers now. Over the next few days, Mark tried calling and emailing the board members. His messages went unanswered or received vague replies about safety issues and neighborhood regulations. No one provided clear explanations, and the locked gate remained. Adding to his confusion, neighbors near the locked gate seemed hesitant to discuss the matter. Some shrugged it off, saying it was just HOA business, while others offered uneasy glances and changed the subject. One neighbor, Mrs. Sanders, finally shared a quiet whisper. "They say the road is dangerous and needs repair," she said. "But no one really knows when it might reopen." Mark felt a deep sense of unease. The land was his. He had paid for it, maintained it, and visited it regularly. How could access be cut off without his consent or any formal notice? Determined to find the truth, Mark drove to the local county office to check public records. What he found was promising, but also complicated. There was an easement on the property, granting him access through that road. The easement was a legal right recorded years ago, allowing him to use the road regardless of who owned the surrounding land, with renewed hope. Mark returned home, thinking there must be a way to assert this right and regain access to his land. He knew it would take more than frustration and phone calls. That evening, Mark sat at his kitchen table. The locked gate's image burned into his mind. He pulled out his deed, the official document proving his ownership. Carefully, he flipped through the pages, searching for any mention of the road or access rights. There it was, hidden in legal language but unmistakable. A clause that guaranteed Mark the right to use the road to reach his property. It was a promise made long ago and signed by the neighborhood's governing body. It's a very board now keeping him out. A spark of determination ignited inside him. The gate was blocking his access. He had a powerful tool to fight back, a clause that couldn't be ignored. Mark leaned back in his chair, the room growing quiet as the sun dipped below the horizon. Tomorrow, he decided, he would face this challenge head-on. The morning sun filtered through the curtains as Mark woke with a renewed sense of purpose. Yesterday's discovery, the clause in his deed, gave him the confidence he needed. But before he could act, he had to fully understand why the road had been blocked in the first place. Mark started his day by visiting the neighborhood office again, this time asking for any official notices or documents related to the closure. The receptionist, a young woman named Lisa, was more helpful this time, but still cautious. "There was a board meeting last week," she said. "They discussed the road. Something about safety concerns and the cost of repairs. Don't have the full details." Mark nodded and requested the minutes of that meeting. Lisa promised to email them, and Mark left the office with cautious optimism. Back home, Mark's phone buzzed. The meeting minutes had arrived. He scanned the document carefully. Detailed discussions about the road's condition, potholes, erosion near the edges, and some concerns about liability if someone were to get hurt while driving through. The board had voted to close the road temporarily, till repairs could be made. But the minutes also mentioned a plan to ask property owners to share repair costs and possibly restrict access permanently in some areas. Mark frowned. None of this had been communicated directly to him. Nor had he been consulted about the costs or restrictions, feeling the weight of the situation. Mark decided it was time to talk to neighbors, those who might be affected or had information about the board's intentions. He stopped by Mrs. Sanders' house first. She was tending to her garden and greeted him with a wary smile. "I know something's going on with the road," Mark said gently. "Have you heard anything from the board?" Mrs. Sanders sighed. "They say it's for safety, but I think it's more about control. Some neighbors have been upset about outsiders using the road. We want to keep it just for themselves." Mark listened carefully. He hadn't realized there was tension around who could use the road. Its land was outside the official neighborhood boundaries, but the road passed through those boundaries. Next, Mark visited Tom, a neighbor who lived just beyond the gate. Tom was more straightforward. "They're worried about maintenance costs," Tom said. "But the real issue is that they don't want people like you coming through. They see your cabin as an outsider's place." Mark felt a pang of frustration. The blocked road wasn't just about safety. It was a subtle message that his right to access might be challenged simply because of his location. Still, Mark knew emotions wouldn't solve the problem. Facts and legal rights would. That afternoon, he went back to the neighborhood office and requested a copy of the neighborhood's governing documents, the rules and agreements the board followed. Among pages of regulations, he found references to roads and access, but no clear language overriding his deed's easement clause. Mark began to see a pattern. The board was citing general concerns, but ignoring the specific legal promises made. To him, with his attorney, Karen Mitchell, now a crucial part of his plan, Mark scheduled a meeting to review the documents. Karen explained how the deed clause was a strong legal tool. The HOA or board could not simply block access without violating the agreement. But Karen also warned of possible delays. These situations can drag on if the board resists. You need to be ready to assert your rights clearly and firmly. Mark wasn't deterred. He felt more prepared than ever to move forward as evening settled over the quiet neighborhood. Mark sat on his porch, the locked gate still a stubborn silhouette in his mind's eye. He had uncovered much, but the real challenge was just beginning. Tomorrow, he would reach out to the board directly. He would make sure they knew he was aware and ready. Mark's determination only grew stronger after uncovering the reasons behind the road closure. Though the board's explanations hinted at safety and maintenance concerns, he knew there was more beneath the surface. Now, the key to regaining access rested firmly in the legal language of his deed. That evening, the fresh cup of coffee in hand, Mark spread out his property documents across the kitchen table. The deed was thick with formal language, full of terms and phrases that weren't always easy to follow. Still, Mark was determined to find the exact clause he had spotted earlier, the one promising him guaranteed access. He read slowly, carefully, marking passages and making notes. The document outlined his ownership rights clearly, but what stood out was the right-of-way section. It granted Mark and his heirs an irrevocable easement to cross the road and maintain access to the property no matter who else owned the surrounding land. Even more significant, the deed included a stipulation that any governing body or association connected to the neighborhood acknowledges and agrees to this easement at the time of their official formation. In other words, the Homeowners Association Board had legally agreed to his right of access long before the gate appeared. Mark leaned back, the weight of that discovery sinking in. The HOA's sudden road closure wasn't just a surprise, it was a breach of a legally binding agreement. The next day, Mark reached out to Karen Mitchell, the attorney who had been advising him quietly throughout the ordeal. Karen was experienced in property law and had handled similar cases before. After reviewing the deed and the neighborhood's governing documents, Karen confirmed Mark's interpretation. "This clause is powerful," she said. "It means the board can't just lock the gate and cut off your access without violating the agreement." Karen explained that the easement gave Mark the legal right to use the road for all reasonable purposes connected to his property, including reaching his cabin. She also noted that any attempts to restrict or impede that access could be challenged in court. Feeling empowered but cautious, Mark asked, "What's the best way to proceed?" Karen advised, starting with a formal notification. Send them a letter outlining the deed clause, remind them of their obligations, and request that they restore your access immediately. It's important to document everything. That afternoon, Mark drafted the letter with Karen's guidance. He laid out the facts calmly, citing the deed's language and emphasizing the board's legal duty to honor it. He requested the gate be unlocked and the road reopened by a specific date. He sent the letter via certified mail to the HOA board president and kept a copy for his records. Days passed with no response. The locked gate stood firm. Mark decided to attend the next HOA meeting. He hoped face-to-face discussion might open the door to resolution. Walking into the room filled with familiar faces, Mark felt a mix of determination and unease. When the board president acknowledged his presence, Mark calmly asked for a chance to speak. The room grew quiet. He explained the deed clause, his right of access, and the legal expectations. Some board members exchanged glances, while others listened intently. The president responded cautiously. "We understand your concerns, Mark, but the road's condition and the costs involved are serious issues. We need to consider the safety of all residents." Mark nodded. "I appreciate that. But blocking access altogether isn't the solution. I'm willing to work together on maintenance, but my right to access must be respected." The conversation ended without immediate agreement, but Mark left the meeting with a clearer sense of where things stood. The board was aware he knew his rights, but the road ahead might still be challenging. That evening, as Mark returned to his cabin, the locked gate visible in the distance, he felt a mixture of hope and resolve. He held a powerful card in his hand, the deed clause, but now it was time to use it fully. He was ready. After the HOA meeting, Mark knew he needed a more direct and formal approach. The board had listened, but their concerns about safety and costs were real obstacles. He understood that any lasting solution would require cooperation, but it was also clear that his rights could not be ignored. The next morning, Mark composed a respectful but firm email to the HOA board members, carefully laying out the key points. He reiterated the deed's easement clause, explaining how it guaranteed his access and how blocking the road violated that agreement. He emphasized his willingness to collaborate on road maintenance and safety concerns, offering to share repair costs if necessary. Mark proposed a meeting specifically to discuss the road access issue and explore practical solutions that would benefit everyone. His tone was calm and cooperative, designed to open dialogue rather than escalate conflict. He hit send, hoping for a positive response. Over the next several days, he received only silence. No replies came, no invitations for further talks. The locked gate remained in place, a barrier not only physically but between him and the board. Feeling frustrated but not defeated, Mark decided to call the board president directly. After a few rings, a voice answered, double quotes, "Mark, I got your email." The board president said cautiously, "Look, we know the clause exists, but the situation isn't simple. The road's condition is dangerous, and the neighborhood's liability is at stake. We're trying to protect everyone." Mark listened carefully, understanding their point. I get that safety is important, he replied, but locking me out entirely isn't the answer. I'm willing to take responsibility for maintenance. Related to my access, let's work out a plan together. The board president hesitated. It's complicated, Mark. We'll discuss it at the next meeting and get back to you. Mark thanked him and hung up, feeling the conversation was at least a small step forward. The following week, Mark attended the next board meeting again, this time prepared with detailed suggestions. He had researched local contractors and compiled estimates for road repairs. Also brought a draft proposal outlining how he could contribute to costs and maintenance, ensuring the road remained safe and accessible for everyone involved. During the meeting, Mark presented his plan clearly and respectfully. Some board members nodded thoughtfully. Others remained skeptical but engaged in the discussion. One member finally spoke up. Mark is willing to share in the repair expenses. That changes things. We need to ensure the repairs meet safety standards, but this could be a way forward. The board agreed to consider the proposal seriously and requested a formal written agreement to outline responsibilities and costs. Mark left the meeting feeling cautiously optimistic. The locked gate might not come down immediately, but a path toward reopening the road was beginning to take shape. Back at his cabin, Mark thought about the journey so far. The blocked road had sparked frustration and confusion, but it had also led him to a deeper understanding of his rights and the importance of clear communication. He realized that while legal clauses were powerful, cooperation and patience were equally essential to resolving conflicts like this. With the deed clause firmly in hand and a willingness to work together, Mark felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Tomorrow, he would draft the formal agreement and prepare for the next steps. The road to his land was blocked for now, but Mark was steadily paving the way to reclaiming it. With a renewed sense of purpose, Mark knew the time had come to move beyond polite requests and begin asserting his rights in a more formal way. The board's willingness to discuss repairs was a step forward, but the locked gate still stood, blocking the road and his access to his own property. Mark sat down with Karen, his attorney, to map out a clear plan. Karen reminded him that the deed's easement clause was a legally binding agreement, not just a suggestion. The HOA board had a responsibility to honor it, and failing to do so could have serious legal consequences. Your first step, Karen explained, is to send an official demand letter. It should outline the situation, cite the specific clause, and request immediate restoration of access. This letter will serve as formal evidence if the situation escalates. Together, they drafted the letter carefully, keeping the tone professional and respectful while emphasizing the urgency. It included a clear deadline for the board to unlock the gate and restore the road, along with a reminder of their legal obligations. Mark signed the letter and sent it via certified mail to the HOA board president, keeping copies for himself. The wait began. Days passed without a reply. Frustration mounted, but Mark remained calm. He knew this process could take time, and he was prepared to follow through. On the sixth day, Mark received a response not from the board president directly, but from the HOA's legal counsel. The letter acknowledged receipt of Mark's demand and confirmed the board's awareness of the deed clause. However, it raised concerns about ongoing road repairs and the need to ensure safety before reopening. The letter suggested that Mark contribute to a special fund established for maintenance and repairs, proposing a timeline that stretched out over several months. Mark carefully reviewed the letter with Karen. While the HOA was acknowledging his rights, they were still placing conditions on restoring access. It was clear the board hoped to delay the process. Karen advised Mark that, although contributing to repairs was reasonable, the board could not use it as an excuse to deny immediate access. We can push back on this, she said. Your rights are not contingent on waiting for months. Mark decided it was time to escalate. Filed a formal complaint with the local county office responsible for property rights and easements, explaining the situation in detail. This action placed additional pressure on the HOA to comply. At the same time, Mark prepared for the possibility of a legal case. Gathering all documents, correspondence, and records of the board's actions. Meanwhile, the locked gate remained. Mark's friends and neighbors saw his determination and offered support. A few even expressed surprise at how complicated what seemed like a simple right-of-way had become. Mark appreciated the encouragement but stayed focused. This was about more than exist, was about protecting the rights guaranteed to him and standing up for fairness. One afternoon, Mark received a phone call from the board president. "Mark, we want to avoid legal action," the president said. "Let's find a way to resolve this quickly. Can we meet next week to finalize an agreement?" Mark agreed. The conversation was a hopeful sign that the board recognized the seriousness of the situation. When the meeting day arrived, Mark went prepared. He brought his attorney and a clear proposal outlining responsibilities for repairs, maintenance, and access rights. The discussion was long but productive. The board members listened, asked questions, and ultimately agreed to unlock the gate. Once a formal maintenance agreement was signed, Mark felt relief and satisfaction. Years of uncertainty and frustration were coming to an end. As the meeting wrapped up, the board president extended a hand. "Thanks for your patience, Mark. We'll work to make this right." Mark shook the hand firmly, knowing this victory was the result of persistence, knowledge, and respect. That evening, Mark drove back to his land for the first time since the gate was closed. The road was clear, open, and welcoming. He pulled up to his cabin, breathed deeply, and smiled. Access restored. Rights upheld. A hard-earned success. Even though the gate was finally unlocked, Mark knew this victory was just the beginning. Formal agreement he and the HOA board had signed laid out responsibilities for maintenance and access, but lingering tensions and challenges remained. For weeks after the road reopened, Mark noticed subtle signs of resistance. At times, the gate was left slightly ajar but locked again the next day. He caught whispers among some board members questioning whether he should have access at all. And during neighborhood gatherings, the atmosphere was often cold, with conversations quickly turning quiet when he joined. But Mark refused to be discouraged. He understood that change could be difficult for everyone, and he was determined to lead by example. True to the agreement, Mark immediately took responsibility for routine upkeep on the road leading to his property. He hired contractors to repair potholes, clear debris, and improve drainage. He kept detailed records of expenses and maintenance schedules. Sharing them openly with the board, his transparency helped ease some concerns. Over time, a few neighbors began to see Mark less as an outsider and more as a responsible part of the larger neighborhood fabric. Still, there were challenges. One afternoon, Mark received a letter from the board citing a minor issue with road signage near his property. The letter suggested additional fees for repair costs. Mark reviewed the agreement carefully. The maintenance responsibilities outlined were clear, but the fees for signage were not included. He responded politely but firmly, asking for clarification. And reiterating the terms of the agreement, the board replied, apologizing for the confusion and withdrawing the fee request. It was a small victory, but a reminder that vigilance was necessary. Beyond the technicalities, Mark worked hard to build personal connections with neighbors. He invited several of them to his cabin for informal gatherings, barbecues, fishing, trips, and campfires by the lake. These moments helped break down barriers and foster trust. Slowly, attitudes shifted. Some neighbors approached Mark with questions about his land and his experiences, showing genuine interest. Others expressed appreciation for his efforts to maintain the road and keep it safe. Mark realized that beyond the legal battle, this was about community as much as property rights. He took pride in being a bridge between the land he loved and the neighborhood around it. One evening, as the sun set over the lake, Mark sat on his porch feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. The road to his land was open, the deed clause upheld, and relationships slowly healing. He thought back to the locked gate, the symbol of frustration and division. Anne smiled. What had started as a conflict had turned into a journey of patience, respect, and mutual understanding. Mark knew challenges might arise again, but he was ready. With rights protected and connections growing, he was at home. As Mark settled into his renewed access to the cabin and took up the responsibility of maintaining the road, he found that his journey was far from over. While some neighbors gradually warmed to his presence, others remained distant and new. Challenges began to surface, testing his resolve in ways he hadn't anticipated. One afternoon, while clearing fallen branches near the edge of the road, Mark noticed a figure approaching from the neighborhood side. It was Lisa, the receptionist from the neighborhood office, who had helped him early on. "I just wanted to say," Lisa began somewhat hesitantly, "that a few of us have been talking and we think you handled this whole situation really well. You stood your ground but didn't make enemies. It's impressive." Mark smiled, grateful for the unexpected support. "Thanks, Lisa. It means a lot." It turned out that Lisa and a handful of other neighbors felt uneasy about how the board had handled the road closure. They admired Mark's patience and legal knowledge. Some were beginning to question the board's approach. Lisa offered to help Mark by providing insight into upcoming board meetings and sharing community concerns that might otherwise go unspoken. This alliance gave Mark an advantage of information that helped him stay ahead of potential issues. Despite this, the board remained cautious, and not all members welcomed the shift in dynamics. At a particularly tense meeting, a board member raised concerns about Mark's presence and questioned whether his ongoing involvement would disrupt neighborhood harmony. Mark listened carefully, but didn't back down. "My goal isn't to disrupt, but to work together for everyone's benefit," he said. "I believe that respecting everyone's rights and responsibilities creates stronger communities." The room grew quiet. Some nodded in agreement, while others exchanged uneasy looks. Meanwhile, new issues arose related to environmental regulations. Recent heavy rains had caused some erosion near the road, leading the neighborhood's environmental committee to propose stricter controls on maintenance activities to protect local waterways. Mark understood the importance of protecting the environment but was concerned that overly restrictive rules might hinder timely road repairs. Working closely with his attorney and environmental experts, Mark helped draft a balanced maintenance plan that complied with regulations while ensuring the road remained safe and accessible. His proactive approach earned respect from some committee members and helped ease tensions around the issue. Through these ups and downs, Mark discovered the power of collaboration and communication. He realized that legal rights were crucial, but so was listening to others and finding common ground. He also understood that standing up for one's rights sometimes meant facing criticism and opposition, and that resilience was key. One afternoon, Mark received an invitation from the board president to join a newly formed neighborhood advisory council group designed to improve communication between property owners and the board. Accepting the invitation, Mark saw it as an opportunity to contribute positively and help prevent future conflicts. As the summer progressed, Mark's role evolved from outsider to engaged neighbor, advocate, and problem solver. Though the locked gate had once symbolized division and frustration, it now represented a journey toward understanding and connection. Mark felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, confident in his rights and strengthened by unexpected allies. As autumn settled over the neighborhood, Mark reflected on the long road that had led him here both literally and figuratively. What had begun as a locked gate and a legal battle had evolved into a story about perseverance, respect, and community. The advisory council meetings proved to be productive. Mark found himself working alongside neighbors and board members, all committed to improving the neighborhood's future. His experiences with the deed clause and road access gave him a unique perspective that helped bridge gaps between different viewpoints. One evening, during a council meeting, the board president acknowledged the progress made. Mark's persistence and willingness to collaborate remind us all that rights and responsibilities go hand in hand, she said. "We're better for it." Mark felt a sense of pride but also humility. The journey had tested him, but it had also shown him the value of listening and working together. With the road well maintained and his access secured, Mark began to focus more on his cabin and the life he loved there. He hosted friends and neighbors for quiet weekends, sharing the beauty of the lake and the peaceful surroundings. Those gatherings became moments of connection, reminders that property and community weren't mutually exclusive, but could coexist harmoniously. Still, Mark remained vigilant. He continued to document maintenance, communicate openly with the board, and participate actively in neighborhood affairs. He understood that protecting rights required ongoing effort. One afternoon, as Mark sat on his porch watching the sun dip below the treetops, Lisa stopped by with a warm smile. "Thanks for everything you've done," she said. "You've changed the neighborhood for the better." Mark smiled back. "I couldn't have done it without the support of friends like you." Looking out over the open road leading to his land, Mark felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The locked gate was gone, replaced by a path of trust and cooperation. He knew that challenges might arise again, but he was ready with knowledge, patience, and allies. Most importantly, he had learned that standing up for what is right doesn't mean standing alone. With that, Mark took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air, grateful for the journey and hopeful for the future. His land was his. Access secured, not just by a clause in a deed, but by the respect and understanding built along the way.